The heart monitor flatlined for half a second, then staggered back into a thin, uneven rhythm, and every doctor in the room froze. That tiny pause felt like the world holding its breath. If you've ever wondered what hope sounds like when it's about to disappear, it sounds exactly like that: silence, followed by a desperate beat that refuses to give up. Stay with this story until the end, because what happens next will change how you see genius, faith, and where miracles really come from. And if stories like this move you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. You never know whose life might be changed by the next one. They called her Patient A12, because after 100 doctors, she had stopped feeling like a person and started feeling like a problem no one could solve. Her real name was Evelyn Carter, a woman who once laughed loudly, loved gardening, and never missed her daughter's piano recitals. Now she lay still in a private hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and fear, her body shutting down piece by piece. Specialists flew in from other countries. Panels were held. Papers were written. Every scan, every test, every treatment ended the same way, with silence and shaking heads. "We've done everything we can," became the sentence her family learned to hate. Outside her room, her husband sat with red eyes and trembling hands, staring at a coffee he hadn't touched in hours. Their daughter whispered prayers she wasn't even sure she believed in anymore. And down the hall, almost invisible to everyone, a woman named Ruth pushed a cleaning cart slowly, her eyes often drifting toward Evelyn's door. Ruth cleaned the hospital floors at night. She mopped around grief, wiped away traces of blood and tears, and learned not to ask questions. People rarely looked at her face. To most, she was just the cleaner. What almost no one knew was that Ruth's daughter, Amara, often waited for her mother in the hospital library after school. Amara was 16, quiet, observant, and always reading something far beyond her grade level. While other kids scrolled on their phones, Amara devoured medical journals, neuroscience papers, and physics textbooks. Her teachers had called her a once-in-a-generation mind, but genius doesn't always come with opportunity. Scholarships were promised, then delayed. Programs praised her talent, then forgot her name. Still, Amara kept learning, because learning was the one thing no one could take from her. One night, as Ruth cleaned near the ICU, Amara sat nearby, flipping through a medical journal she'd found discarded in a bin. She noticed a familiar name on the cover: Drive. Lewis, one of the doctors who had just walked out of Evelyn's room looking defeated. Curious, Amara read the article. Then another. Then she started connecting dots that made her heart beat faster. She quietly asked her mother who was in room A12. Ruth sighed and said, "A woman no one can save." Amara didn't answer. She stood up and walked closer to the glass wall of Evelyn's room, watching machines breathe for a body that couldn't breathe for itself. Something about the data she'd read, the symptoms she'd overheard, and the treatments they'd tried didn't sit right with her. It wasn't arrogance. It was instinct sharpened by years of learning alone. That night, Amara barely slept. She wrote equations, drew diagrams, and reread case studies until dawn painted the hospital windows pale gold. The next evening, Amara did something unthinkable. She asked to speak to the doctors. The nurses looked at her like she was lost. A teenage girl, the daughter of a cleaner. One even laughed softly and said, "Sweetheart, this is serious." But Amara didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She simply said, "Please. 5 minutes. If I'm wrong, you lose nothing." Something in her calm stopped them. Maybe it was the exhaustion that made them vulnerable. Maybe it was desperation. "Doctor." Lewis finally sighed and agreed. Inside the conference room, 100 minds had already failed. Amara stood there with shaking hands but steady eyes. She spoke about a rare neurological feedback loop, about how the treatments had unintentionally worsened it, about a counterintuitive approach that required doing the opposite of standard protocol. She referenced studies none of them had read in years, some not at all. When she finished, the room was silent again, but this time, it felt different. "This is impossible," one doctor said. "It's risky," said another. Amara swallowed hard. "So is doing nothing," she replied. They dismissed her. Politely, firmly, completely. Ruth apologized over and over as she pulled her daughter away. Amara nodded, pretending it didn't hurt. But that night, as Ruth cleaned the ICU, alarms suddenly screamed from Evelyn's room. Her condition crashed harder than ever before. Doctors ran. Orders were shouted. And then, Nothing worked.